this session is to focus primarily on virtual networking and virtual interview etiquette. A lot of these things can be carried over to eventually when we do physical interviews where you're in person. We want to make sure that we're doing the best we can to prepare ourselves for these interviews and even how to network with our peers and whoever's around us. Awesome. So we'll start with virtual networking. So how do I establish my network? Networking opportunities occur on a daily basis and can include partaking in a brief conversation with someone on an elevator to an arranged meeting with a professional. There are many ways to develop your list of potential networking contacts. Begin by identifying all the people that you come in contact with through your activities. So, like that last slide said, we can find somebody to network with pretty much any degree away from us. And these are just a couple examples of who we might want to reach out to, who might be able to unlock an opportunity for us, or might have some information for us to lead us towards our next opportunity or role. This could consist of your friends, family members and relatives, former and current employers, coworkers, coaches, classmates, club and organization members, or even professional associations. Definitely analyzing those relationships that you have with any of these groups of people, see how they can potentially help you, and let's put together a way that you can reach out and, again, like work towards progressing towards getting a job or unlocking an opportunity. So there's a couple things you want to do before we're going ahead and starting networking. So how do we prepare for that? Research is definitely very important. You want to research the people you admire or those who hold interesting positions. You can gather information about people with a simple Google search, or you can connect with them on many social networks that people spend increasing time on. So that could be Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. You're familiarizing yourself with their personal history. This information will come in handy when you reach out to them, and it shows that you've done your homework. It also saves just like a little bit of time in terms of when you're actually in a physical interview or when you're actually reached the point where you're having a conversation. You already know what things you can touch on, what things you might share as values, and it can really guide the conversations that you have if you've done a little bit of research on whoever you're speaking with beforehand. Definitely doesn't come across creepy. It just shows that you really care about whatever you're pursuing. So another thing to consider when you're preparing to network is your elevator pitch. We call it an elevator pitch because it's very quick. Imagine if you're going up an elevator, you have about like maybe 2 minutes to tell somebody something. How would you describe yourself, your professional self, within that 2 minutes? It doesn't have to be verbatim, it should be natural. You're just preparing like a quick way to explain who you are as a professional, and very quickly. Practicing this is really great as well. You have it ready whenever you need it. Something definitely really important to consider is keeping an open mind about networking. Whether you're an introvert or extrovert, networking can definitely be a very stressful thing to do. Talking to strangers, vying for a job, or even a business card can be very stressful. But if you change the way you think about networking, the experience can be much more enjoyable. You want to think of networking as a way to build relationships over time. Think about any type of benefit you've derived from networking. A new job, client, or contract. It was most likely from a relationship that you cultivated for a while. Instead of forcing yourself to go to a conference to make new connections, ask someone out for coffee or lunch. In our case, probably right now, a virtual coffee is a really great way to do this. You'll be able to have a meaningful conversation in a more private setting. Another really great thing too that I think virtual coffees can do is that it's just an hour of someone's time, 30 minutes of someone's time, when it starts, when it ends, and you can prepare for it. It's not by chance. You definitely keeping an open mind about these things is really great. So again, COVID definitely changes the landscape of networking, but like I said, virtual coffees are awesome. Let's say you meet someone on social media or even an online webinar that you really enjoy what they're talking about. Why not reach out to them and set up a virtual coffee? People are doing anything online right now. People are watching virtual bingo or wine tastings. What would be so odd about reaching out to somebody who is really helpful to maybe your journey in terms of your job search or even just learning or connecting? Keep it to 15 minutes for starters, just because you might not know each other and you want to keep it friendly. They're really awesome, and these can be done through something like Zoom, like you see here in this image, or within Google has Google Meet. You can set up a quick amount of time to just chat through something with a professional. Another great thing to consider when you're networking during COVID is checking social media sites like LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, Instagram. Sometimes, depending on circumstances, you want to make sure to read the room correctly with something like that. They're really great ways to connect with each other and fantastic tools for expanding your network. Even hanging out on internet activities online might, again, connect you to people that you can reach out to and set up these times to pick their brain or even just get to know them a little bit, which might help you in your job search. So let's say you've done all these steps. You've met with them, you've had your virtual coffee. How do we stay in touch with this person that you've met with? So frequency and reciprocity of communication can help strengthen relationships. One of the easiest ways to expand and strengthen your network is to build on relationships you already have. You want to reach out periodically every 5 months or so just to say hello. We definitely don't want to leave them in the lurch. We've met and then we never talk to them again. You want to maintain that relationship. Consider it like a plant, like you're going to continue to water it and nurture it. Another great way to stay in touch is through social media. You don't necessarily have to be writing them letters or anything like that. It's really easy to just send someone a note on Instagram or LinkedIn or Twitter to connect with those colleagues and clients. So some things to avoid: you don't want to ask for a job outright. Networking is all about turning those cold leads into warm leads. You want to wait until you've established a relationship with someone before putting out that message or those feelers. It definitely will lead up to that eventually, or maybe they can tell you, I can find you something else, or I'll consider you at another time. But we definitely don't want to deliberately ask those things off the bat. Never ask, can you get me a job? And again, two things just very important. If you're asking for someone's time, you want to make sure that you're listening to them while you're present in that conversation. And I know this can be something that just happens, but even with lags with the internet, but try your best not to interrupt them when they're talking. Those are two key things you want to make sure to avoid. Awesome. So we're going to move towards virtual interview etiquette. So some basic must-haves to consider. This I recommend 100% is you want to test your technology. The minute you agree to a virtual interview, you want to test your technology to ensure that you're set up for success. Make sure that you're near Wi-Fi, that you're connected, that you have a power cord nearby you. I've had my computer die in meetings and having to explain that is really frustrating. Make sure you have a pad and paper so you're not switching screens. If you're trying to take notes on the side, there's lots of ways to just make sure that you're prepared. You want to set the scene and minimize distractions. As you can see, I don't really have anything behind me so as not to distract you guys while I'm presenting this presentation to you. So if you have a mess behind you or something like that, maybe move to a room or clean up whatever's behind you so it doesn't distract whoever's viewing your screen. You want to sit down prepared, like I said, having those notes and papers and anything you need to be present in that conversation. Make sure you have it as close as like an arm reach to you. You want to practice what you're talking through, but don't memorize it. It is a human conversation and you want to feel relatable, and having almost like a skeleton written down on a piece of paper. That's what I do usually in interviews, to just have a couple things that I want to make sure 100% that I touch on. Really helps guide that conversation. So I don't have to memorize it, but I make sure that I'm checking all the boxes of what I want to be known to whoever I'm talking to. Another thing you want to do is monitor your body language. You want to make sure you're not slumping. You want to seem present in that conversation. If you can, try not to yawn. Those kinds of things. You want to make sure that whoever's on the other side of the line feels like you're connected and present. Just like a regular interview, you want to dress the part. Make sure to avoid anything that doesn't seem too professional. We'll actually go over that in the next couple sections. But be yourself. That's really the biggest thing, is that it's just two people interacting. There's a lot that you can learn from each other, and don't get too held up in either anxiety. I know that's easy to say, but it can be a really great thing when the two of you meet and learn from each other and connect. Awesome. So we're going to dive into interview clothing a little bit. So you want to dress slightly more formal for your first interview. This is the nicest you'll ever look at work. You don't need to go crazy. So you want to not show too much skin, legs, shoulders, feet, which probably won't be a concern considering you're on the computer. But again, you can apply this to in-person interviews as well. You also want to base this on the company and your position. For example, I'm a designer. what might be acceptable for me might not be acceptable for someone who's working in retail or maybe someone who's working in a warehouse. Everybody has different parameters in terms of wardrobe, what is acceptable. You want to make sure you're comfortable above all in your clothing. I know for myself, if I'm wearing something that's like itchy or too tight or uncomfortable for me, I'm not capable of feeling comfortable and presenting and feeling good. So I think it's definitely important to make sure you're wearing something that makes you feel good and able to focus. Some points of reference. Something that you can do is if you know anybody at the company, you can ask them. Let's say you're not sure about, with interview clothing, let's say, I'm not sure, I can't find any information about it. If you have some kind of connection, you can definitely ask them, what's the vibe here? If you also don't know anybody that works at that company, you can do a little bit of sleuthing and make sure that, let's say on LinkedIn or Instagram, if there's any pictures of the company, what are they wearing? And by that deducting, hey, this might be what's acceptable to wear to work, and base your outfit decision on something like that. So tattoos and piercings. For the most part, you want to consider covering them or taking them out, the piercings, for the interview. In the interview, you can ask the company if they have a policy around tattoos and piercings, unless you're absolutely certain that the company won't care. Unnatural hair colors. If you're considering working in a more conservative profession, you might want to consider the following: not having an unnatural hair color, or styling your hair in a way that looks more conservative, even with the color, at least for the interview. I can say this from personal experience. I actually used to have blue hair, and I worked in a real estate company, which was very conservative. And I definitely followed that second bullet point where I would have it kept neatly and styled in a way that it didn't throw anybody off. Another thing that's not bulleted here, but I do think can be really helpful, and I know that a lot of people do, is that consider investing in maybe like a wig, so you don't have to undo your hair color or change it, and consider just popping that on when you attend work or even when you're virtually attending work. That way you don't have to take away your personality. And I know that dyeing your hair can be really expensive, but that can be an option as well. Hopefully the job or company doesn't care, but it's always better to be safe than sorry, unless you're sure that the company won't care. So some things to avoid. We want to avoid ripped clothing, graphic apparel, which basically just means anything that has like words on it, t-shirts that have a phrase, something like that. Nothing that's offensive or might be perceived as offensive. If you get a gut feeling that, it might not come off well, just err on the side of caution and don't do that. You definitely don't want to wear a hat. Avoid chewing gum. This is more for in the office, but it's definitely something to consider. Try not to wear perfume or cologne. Strong scents can be irritating to people, and you definitely don't want to give your interviewer a headache. This is also a really great thing to consider. Let's say you're looking for your interview clothing. TJ Maxx is an awesome place to check out. You don't want to spend a lot of money. It's a great place to look. You don't know if you'll need it in the long run, so definitely don't invest like a large chunk of change in that first interview outfit. Another place that's really great to check is either Crossroads or Buffalo Exchange. Both are secondhand stores with an awesome selection of gently used clothing. Their items tend to have more personality. I would definitely recommend checking there out if you're really into fashion, or even just in general. They have some really great things. All right. Awesome. So that was the end of the presentation. Good luck, everybody, by the way, and I'm crossing my fingers for everyone. Thanks, everybody.